Are you ready to learn how to get started with your client on your first week as a virtual assistant? In this video, I'm going to walk you through my best tips as you hopefully get started with your client. What are the best ways to show up for them and how to avoid that usual overwhelm that happens when you're just getting onboarded. Now, when it comes to your first day as a virtual assistant, whether you've been doing this for years or that this is your first client, it's always going to look different because one client might have different preferences, have different lifestyle, and you'll get the structure from that. Or this client has a totally different life, different expectations. So the first thing that you really want to do is to learn their expectations. Now, this could be during that interview, and probably could have asked it during the interview, or in your onboarding call with them. It's just ask them, like, what do you expect from me from day to day? Like, how do you want to be communicated? What are the different tools that you want me to learn? How do you expect me to show up also every day? Do you want to hop on a call right at the start of my shift, or are we mostly going to be async? So it's learning how the client wants to work, so then you're not just assuming of how it is that they want to work. So you can ask essentially kind of end of interview kind of questions where you're trying to figure out like how they want the day to go. So then for you, you're not just assuming that just because this is what your last client wanted, you automatically have to do it for this client. So it's a little bit of just that clarity of what makes sense for the current client you're working with. Next is you want to go ahead and prepare the day before. Now, hopefully if you have the understanding of the expectations, the tools you're going to use, you're going to go ahead and research them, find out what your tasks are going to be like. If it's going to be email management or calendar management, kind of buffing up what tools they might be using, how to use that best. If you already have access to their calendar, to their email, looking that through so then you can get familiar with their flow, the kind of emails or calendar invites that they get. And it's also good to go ahead and set your top 3 priorities while you're at it, if there is already that visibility of what it is. And this is honestly what you should be doing moving forward anyway, is before the workday is you already have set your 3 priorities based on what was talked about. It could be that your 3 priorities are just, learn Notion, learn this tool, learn how to do this skill, especially on that first week. But the important thing is that you've set your priorities and then you'll later on communicate this with your client. That way you guys are able to sync up and know if this is really the priority for the day. Next is you need to own your task list. What I mean by this is you have to be the one responsible for keeping your task list organized. And if you start seeing that, hey, I don't have a lot of tasks lined up, it's going ahead and asking your client like, hey, I've noticed I only have 3 tasks left. If there's anything else that I can do for you, or would you like me to go ahead and start this kind of task? So depending on what you guys talked about already. So let's say you are more of an admin virtual assistant. Let's say you finish most of your tasks, you can go ahead and ask them like, hey, I noticed I have 3 more tasks left. I also remember for an interview, you wanted me to go ahead and actually clean out your files. Do you want me to just get started with that? So owning your task list is really taking initiative of looking at where things are at, making sure it's organized, making sure it's updated. So then for your client, it's easy for them to delegate things to you and also know where you are at capacity wise. Next is make sure to ask questions. Now, I know it's a little bit intimidating, again, especially if it's your first client, but it's important that you have that open communication with your client, that you establish it, that you tell them like, hey, I've done this before or I've never done this before, and I will ask you questions back and forth depending on where I get stuck with. This is kind of setting your own expectations with them, as well as kind of giving yourself permission to ask questions, to get clarity, to know what the next steps are, so then you are not stuck, because you're not expected to read your client's minds. It's okay to ask questions. And in most clients, it's expected for you to have questions. They don't expect you to just learn everything right on the get-go. Next is to make sure to document your process. So as part of owning your task list, it's also making sure that you document what did you get done today and how did you get those things done. This is kind of essentially the beginnings of you creating your standard operating procedure, which is basically your checklist or your recipe of how you get things done so you can have repeatable results. So imagine if you didn't write down the recipe of a perfect carbonara or spaghetti sauce that you just made and you just have to keep starting from scratch. This is the importance of documenting your work, of how you did your work, so the next time you can create the same result. Next is find resources. What I mean by this is there's Reddit groups, there's Facebook groups. If you're ever stuck and you're working one-on-one with your client, know that you can tap into a community. They can ask for help. Someone else probably already already went through a blockage or a problem you already went through, so you can seek and ask for help outside of it. Of course, just make sure you don't divulge a lot of your clients' private information. But the point of it is that you are keeping in mind that as a virtual assistant, one of your key skills is being able to find ways to get the right resources or the right information. So know that if you're ever stuck, you can always tap on other people, or you can even comment your question below on any of my videos, and usually I will actually get back to you on those comments. Next is to go ahead and learn and organize. What I mean by this is, as you're going through your client's data, as you're going through their email, their files, their sheets, maybe start seeing like how you could organize these as you're learning them. One of your advantages as someone who is totally new is that you get to see things from a different perspective than your client who's been looking at these same sheets, looking at these same folders for years or months. So you have that fresh eye of being able to see like, oh, I see all of these photos are for the social media account. Let me go ahead and put this into a folder and even make it a folder per platform. Or, oh, I noticed all of these sheets are kind of all over the place. Let's go ahead and put this into this folder. Or let's see these emails or the common ones that you get from clients. Let's organize them into one place. So it's already starting to capture the different sets of data that you're seeing, because you're not just organizing it for your client, you're honestly organizing it for yourself. You're trying to make sure that you don't miss information. You're organizing the information to what makes sense moving forward, so you don't get lost in the weeds. Next is to start taking note of recurring tasks. Now, what recurring tasks are, these are the things that need to get done daily, weekly, and monthly, maybe quarterly or even yearly or every other month. The point of this is start creating a database for yourself of like, hey, I want to make sure I send my daily report every single day. I want to make sure that we create this report for our marketing analytics every single week. So this comes from observing from what your client does or asks you to do on a daily or weekly basis, or even just outright asking your clients of like, hey, what could be recurring things that I could be capturing and documenting for you? And of course, there's mastering the tools. Now again, we don't expect you to just master everything right on the get-go. The point of this is to actually start exploring, play around with tools. If you're using a tool like Notion like we do, it's going ahead and maybe even creating your own workspace and finding out more or best practices from other people, more templates, more examples basically of how to use it. That way you can get comfortable of using it and it doesn't have to be too intimidating. And also, again, you're coming in as a fresh eye. You're coming in as a fresh perspective on this. So you might be finding a shortcut for the tool that your client has been looking for. It's always good to be curious, especially on that first week as you're learning and absorbing, so then you can play around and find what works for you for your work style as well. Next is you want to start painting the picture of the business. So what I mean by this is most businesses have the same structure. They will have a finance team, a marketing team, a sales team, or just department if your client is working on their own. So what I mean by paint the picture is start putting them together on what could be a mind map or could be a picture of what the business looks like, learning their funnels basically of like how do they get clients, all the way to how do they deliver to clients, all the way to how do they offboard clients as needed. So it's starting to see the shape of how the business works. That way you have a launching pad of where you can take initiative or where you can get started as you're working with your client. It's important to do this because as a virtual assistant, you'll eventually become their second brain, their right-hand person. So it helps to, as early as now, intentionally painting the picture of how the business works so you can learn very early on where you come in as well as their virtual assistant. And lastly, set your routine. Now this is a key thing, is you can never pour from an empty cup. You can't also be organized for your work if you can't be organized for yourself. Any one of our workshops, one of our mentors said that you are the most important person in your calendar. Everything else goes after that. So you need to set your morning routine of how you want to start your day and your evening routine of how you want to wrap up your day so you don't continue working when you're supposed to be sleeping. What I mean by you can't pour from an empty cup, you can't put in a lot of effort if you don't pour into yourself. That's why it's important to set your routine of how you want to start your day, how you want to end your day. That way you are able to take care of yourself in the best way. And this would have a lot of adjustment, especially in that first week, as your client is also adjusting to you. You have to keep that in mind. So it's important to have an open, kind of flexible routine and start setting it for yourself. So then for you, when you wake up, you know how to get yourself to work, especially when you're from home. And when you're ending your day, you know how to wrap it up so then you have more time for yourself as well. Now, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there and comment below. What's your routine as a virtual assistant, or any questions you might have? I would love to know. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home, which you guys can check out those two playlists right here and the latest video right here. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!